Good evening to everyone present here tonight. My name is Brian and I will be your host for tonight. On behalf of the JPO family, we'd like to extend a warm welcome to everyone tuning in for tuning tonight's broadcast. We hope that everyone is doing well and staying safe indoors. A friendly reminder to maintain good hygiene at all times and maintain social distancing when heading out. As we'd like to continue improving your experience with us, please help us achieve this by completing the poll that will be published during this broadcast. If you have any questions you'd like to ask, please feel free to type them out in the Q&A section down below. To anyone who is interested in sharing tonight's broadcast, a live feed will be shared on the JPO Facebook page and YouTube channel, and a recording of the webinar will also be uploaded onto the page. Tonight's seminar features Dr. Andrew Filmer, with his topic being Challenges for Musicians in a Time of a Pandemic. As our JPO family attendees are mostly students ranging from primary school to college, their parents and their teachers, the sharing of knowledge and advice here for all of us tonight is invaluable and greatly appreciated. So thank you, Dr. Andrew.
Hello, good to be here. How are you, Brian?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Well, we're the best as can be hoped, I think. That's how I like to phrase things.
Fair enough. Well, the JPO is very honored to have you join in with us tonight, Dr. Andrew.
Well, let me begin by saying it's a wonderful thing that you're doing. It's amazing the kind of stamina you have to actually do this, not every week or every month. You do this every day during the MCO. And that really, you should get some sort of athletic prize just for the stamina it takes to keep going with this. So well done for all your perseverance and interest in sharing all this knowledge with everyone.
Well, I'm sure the JPO media team is very grateful for that for your compliments. So thank you, Dr. Andrew. So once again, the JPO is very honored to have you join in with us tonight. So I hope everyone will join me in giving Dr. Andrew a warm welcome. So Dr. Andrew is a violist who has also dedicated himself to the academic aspects of music. He has a PhD in musicology from the University of Otago and a master's degree in viola performances from the Indiana University of South Bend. He currently serves as a senior lecturer at Sunway University in Penang. Throughout his life, Dr. Andrew has held roles as both a violist and as a conductor for various orchestras. He has also served as a narrator for some of his performances with the Selangor Symphony and Song Weaver organizations. He is a member of the Sutra Ensemble, the Andung Trio, and was a guest leader for the Ensemble Virama. Additionally, he's performed internationally as a soloist in the UK, Thailand, and was even given the opportunity to tour Japan as a member of the New Zealand's Southern Sinfonia. He has also greatly contributed to various musical workshops, such as the JB Classical Music Festival back in 2017 and 2018, as well as the ABISM inaugural Teachers Conference. Aside from his achievements as a performer, Dr. Andrew is a well-accomplished academic of musicology. His articles and editions have been published internationally within the UK, US, Australia, and New Zealand. And he was even given a chance to present his research with various notable organizations within Germany, Poland, Australia, and New Zealand. He is also well-versed with computer software for academic and corporation presentations, and has received certifications from the University of California in computer software development. With his experience and credentials, he holds a position as a consultant to the Australia and New Zealand Viola Society, as well as an advisor to the Musical Sinfonietta Penang. He is also an associate of the Euro-Asia Association of Performing Arts. Additionally, he has earned the honor of being the first non-American editor to the Journal of the American Viola Society within the entirety of its 30-year history. He also served as a guest lecturer in various conservatories and universities, while also winning awards for public speaking. So once again, without further ado, a very good evening to you, Andrew. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Just one minor correction. Sunway University is here in Kuala Lumpur, but I'm a proud Penangan. So it's just a minor correction.
Okay, sorry about that.
No
Thank you.
worries.
Thank you for correcting me.
Yeah.
So to start off tonight's interview, what can you tell us about the video that we had just watched?
All right. I mean, when you asked me to submit some videos, uh, the natural thing, of course, was to come up with something that was recorded professionally before all this started. But I thought since the theme that I've chosen for today is to try and focus on how we're coping in the time of pandemic, right? I thought, why not just show you something that I've recorded here in the same house that I'm talking to you from, but in collaboration with people who are, safely staying at home elsewhere in the region. So Samuel Tan was playing the piano, my colleague from Sunway University, and our student Katana Kuhendran was singing, and she inspired me enough to go and buy that same mic tomorrow. So the influences of being at home certainly can be interesting in all sorts of respects. So I put that on, and it was it got the attention of quite a few people, and I thought it was nice to be able to share music with people that you can't even see. You don't know who's viewing this, but you know that it's out there. Number one, but number two, to still collaborate. I think that's a huge part of what we miss a lot in the pandemic is not just being able to share music with an audience, but to play music with our friends. That's such a big part of what we do. And so that I thought might have been a good way to begin today's session.
Well, I'm sure a lot of our attendees and even our past guest speakers definitely appreciate the thought of you sharing and collaborating with people. So thanks a lot for sharing that video with us, Dr. Andrew. So
my pleasure. Yes.
So as we've mentioned earlier, your career has branched off into many different aspects, such as viola performances, narration, conducting orchestras, and you've even served as a lecturer for universities and participated in various academic research. So what inspired your decision to pursue such a diverse set of career paths?
I think it's an easy presumption when somebody has such a diverse path to think that I did it intentionally. I think maybe I should list my main skill as getting bored and moving from one thing to another. But in truth, a lot of things were just out of good fortune. An opportunity comes up and you just decide, do you want to take that leap or not? Do you think that new opportunity is something that could lead somewhere else? And for me, these all sort of happened by accident. I just finished my degree in journalism and was thinking about what to do, and I got a job in music in Thailand. I just went there. Then that led to a master's degree in the US. At the end of the master's degree, I got in an accident actually, and I had to stop playing the viola for 6 months. During that time, I was told not to play the instrument. So what was I to do? So I was bored. So I wrote up this paper, this research paper on Mozart. It won an international prize, got myself this full scholarship to go to New Zealand. The scholarship was worth $500,000 ringgit. So I was in the right place at the right time sometimes, or in the case of moving to the master's, to the PhD, maybe sometimes bad luck can turn into good luck if you know how to keep productive. So I think I've just been lucky to be easily bored and have opportunities come my way when they have.
Well, thank you for sharing that very eventful backstory into why you have this many career paths. But yeah, it's good that you're in good health now and still doing what you do. So thank you. So what challenges did you face as a performer? As mentioned earlier, you served as a principal violist, a soloist, a narrator, and a conductor. Did you face any common challenges between these performing arts, or were there any particular challenges that stood out for each of these different roles that you've adopted?
I think every role has their own challenges, but the challenges are also opportunities, I feel. So I think of all the positions that I've tried out, I've dabbled with, I think for me, the hardest position is actually as principal viola, because you have to get the confidence of this entire viola section. And sometimes, if you're not in a regularly performing ensemble, that section may change. And you also have to work alongside your colleagues, the other principal players, especially in the string section, where you have to always fight about bowings. And the concert master will somehow tell you to do a bowing that you don't like to do. And then I'll just look at the cellist, and if the cellist is doing the same bowing as I am, I said, if you can convince him, you can convince me. And somehow they don't want to mess with the cellist. Don't ask me why. So, there are all these sort of things. And at the same time, understand the conductor and help the conductor to make things happen. So I find that to be the most challenging, but at the same time, it gives you the opportunity to really get to know all the violists in your section, plus the other principals. So that kind of networking is a great opportunity as well for that. For being a conductor, I think the biggest challenge is to make sure that they're confident in you, and you have to be confident in yourself, even if you don't know what you're doing. And of course, the best thing to do is to be as knowledgeable as you can, so you can have that confidence. But I wouldn't say that I'm a professional conductor. There are actual professional conductors in this country, including, I think, David Chin, who's listening in. I like to dabble in a lot of things, but I would say that the two major things that I've done is been a violist and been an educator, and I've been a narrator as well. Being a narrator is actually the most interesting for me, because your voice sounds very different. How you are hearing me is not how I hear myself, because your sound actually is vibrating in your skull, and that's affecting the way that you hear it. So you just have to know that, just like a singer, I guess, that you have to pronounce words in a certain way or emphasize a different part of your voice so that you come across quite clearly, even though it sounds weird in your ears. So I hope I've just given you a look at little bits and pieces of these various things. Some things I would say I've spent a good amount of time with. Some other things like conducting, I prefer to say I dabbled with, and I still enjoy dabbling when somebody gives me the opportunity.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. Other than that, what challenges do you think that this pandemic has caused for these roles that we've mentioned? What has the pandemic added to this list of challenges that you've provided for us?
Well, that's a very good question. And that's the topic of what I wanted to discuss today, is what we should do. I don't really have the answers myself, but just quite recently I put together a group of people from Wicked Music People, Rondo Productions, Malacca Classics, Bachfest Malaysia, Verama, and Kuala Lumpur City Opera. And we got as many of them as possible to have a private discussion on Zoom to discuss what's going to happen, because it's maybe a long time till we actually are able to gather on stage. But more importantly, it may be quite a while before we can have the concerts that we are used to having, with anywhere between 20 and 100 people in a room. That's just not going to happen so quickly. So we discussed a few things, and I was happy to just moderate. So some of these really good ideas are not my own, but I'm happy to share them with you. It's been pointed out from the group that the messaging of how safe it is when it becomes safer, is going to be really important. So we're going to reach a stage in our this where it's going to be safe to go to a concert. It's going to be safe to sit in a hall, but somehow there's going to be a bit of fear left. And so when the time comes, we have to provide some confidence to people that it is safe. So a big part of what we're going to do between now and then is to tell people how we're going to get to that stage, right? What kind of measures we're going to take, the distancing between chairs, the distancing between players, whether you're going to get temperature checks, or so many other ways that people try to make an environment safe. So we have to try and get that messaging out. For now, we have to think about two kinds of performances. Ones that help us economically, that to keep running, to pay rent if there are premises to rent. But the other side of it is just to remind people that we're here and what function we serve. So I think that's exactly what JPO is doing now, right? Is having these sessions to show what the organization can do. And that's a really important bit. It may be that as time goes by, we'll have different types of performances that we'll have. Instead of an hour long or an hour and a half concert, we may only have, let's say, 30 to 45 minutes, but we'll repeat that concert over several Fridays in a soiree type setting in order to be able to get the kind of audience, but split over 4 days instead of all at one time, but a shorter concert so that possibly even with interchanging musicians, not the same musicians every time playing. So these are just some of the ideas that that some of us in various organizations are trying to come up with. And I would just like to invite all of the musicians to think about what it's going to be like for us, and not to give up, and not just to say that, oh, you know, everything's just going down the drain. No, we can do this, but we need to, I think most importantly, this is an opportunity for all different groups and organizations to really work together. And that's why in this discussion where we got everybody together, it's going to be nice to have, let's say, a concert by one ensemble which says that the next concert, not by us, but another ensemble is going to be on this date, please support them. And that's something I've always wanted to happen. So it's a bit of a long answer, but I hope that I've given you a bit of an idea about what some of the ideas of not just myself, but of leaders in the field, what they are thinking about as we move forward.
Yeah, that was definitely very eye-opening, but it's great that you guys are starting to plan for the future of what will happen, because it didn't even occur to me that the fear of going to a concert would be a major factor in the long run as well.
But it's also going to be economics, right? We are heading into a recession, so we really have to think about what it's like if the price of a venue is going to stay the same. How are we going to recoup that? You can't really blame people for not coming to the arts when they have bigger concerns like putting food on the table, right? So how are we going to do that, you know? And we have various ideas. One of the ideas is to actually ask for fundraising or for patronage, you know, say what there's a special concert, it's going to be 200-300 ringgit a seat, but your seat is actually, the reason why you're paying that is that you're paying for the next concert, which will be completely free, and we're actually giving out these seats to these people. So like there are all these different ideas that are coming across, but at the same time, we don't know what's going to happen yet. So it's not like nice to live in uncertain times, I guess, but we'll do the best we can to plan for what might happen.
Fair enough. Well, thank you for that. Moving on. So based on your LinkedIn profile, you served as a tutor, instructor, and lecturer for various universities. Would you care to elaborate on the changes that you had faced as you pursued this career in tertiary education?
Well, I'll just talk to you about how it's changed now that we're in the pandemic, right? So now I like to be engaging. You know, I like to have activities with my students. I like to have. I don't like to come into the class and just speak to them for an hour and then they go back. You know, I like to have some sort of back and forth with them. Sometimes put them in groups, and all that's changed, of course. Not that now we have to be online. So it's a major issue about how to deal with not just the dynamics of the classroom. Now everybody has to be muted. It takes effort to take your finger, you know, put your finger on the space bar and answer a question. Whereas if you sat down in class, you might just blurt out a question. You know what I mean? So the whole dynamics have changed. Plus everybody feels alone. You're sitting at home by yourself. So there's a sense of isolation already, which makes you less talkative. So you find that the role of the teacher becomes in many ways like a cheerleader. I find actually it's important to actually have 5 minutes at the beginning of the class just to ask how everybody's doing, and to not press the record button yet, because once the record button is on, you know, to record the session for any students who may have missed it, everybody feels like they're being watched, and so they're quieter. So those are some of the issues that happen when you teach via Zoom. If you're teaching private lessons, that's also, or individual instrumental lessons, there are also many challenges. You will find that you can't tell what your student is hearing because you're not monitoring it live as you're playing or you're talking. So you find that if people use a single mic, like this Rode clip-on right now, if I were to play the instrument right now without changing the volume, the gain, then it would be too loud, and I wouldn't know it, and I wouldn't understand why the student doesn't understand what I'm saying. I just demonstrated it very effectively, so I thought, you know. So teachers will have to think about how to address that problem. You may have to speak closer to a mic, and you may have to stand back when you're playing. For me, I have actually another mic I'm going to get a new one tomorrow so that you can have different settings for each of them. Then you have to buy an interface and maybe a mixer. So I hope that the main thing I hope that is that both students and parents become understanding that we're trying to do our best and we're learning. And you know, it's not easy for us, but we are trying our best to make it work. And a bit of understanding from that side is going to be very helpful. I don't think people quite understand how stressful it is. As I'm talking to you now, I'm actually not looking at your face. I'm looking at my face to make sure that I'm in the right frame, that my gestures are correct. I'm worried that I did not realize that the second monitor that's my TV now is actually reflecting on one side of my face. So all these sort of things make a session, any session on Zoom, it tires you out. And so some understanding from parents and students is always greatly appreciated. But from the side of the teachers as well, we have to face this as a big challenge. We may have to think about investing in audio equipment in order to make our sessions more effective for students. We may have to really think about helping our students on their side of the technology as well, because sometimes they don't have things set up and we have to communicate with them on a technological level to make sure that they're well set up. So it's a very complex field, there are many new challenges, but I honestly feel there are also quite a few opportunities for us. I feel that in an online format like this, the student can't run away. They know that they're being watched all the time, and I can call on a specific student. I know if I share a screen, I know that they can see it clearly, whereas in a physical classroom, if I share a screen, the student who's sitting at the back of the class may not be able to see it as clearly as the student in the front of the class. So there's some advantages of this, and I hope that over time we'll make the best out of all of it.
Right. Well, I'm sure a lot of music teachers are grateful to you for sharing their side of the story regarding the difficulties as well. So, yeah.
By the way, I've had very understanding parents and very understanding students. But but the reason why I say that is that I've heard some horror stories as well from my colleagues about like students or parents being not quite understanding. So that's why I'm saying it. But I'm not saying anything about my own students, nor the parents that of those students.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear for you then. Well, so regarding your extensive experience as a performer, did this make your career path as an educator any easier, or has it worked both ways? Has being a lecturer helped your career as a performer?
Well, I became an educator because my parents are fantastic educators. They're so good at teaching that they were teacher trainers. They're now retired. So they taught people how to teach. And so I was really lucky to come home and the discussions at the dinner table might be related to a new teaching strategy or how the situation of education is in our country. So I had that environment, and I think, and this is a bit controversial because I'm here because I'm a musician, but I would say that in another world, I might not be a musician, but I would still be a teacher. I think that's a core part of who I am, even more than being a musician. However, I would say that being a music teacher really can influence the way that you are as a performer, right? So I've had students with special challenges. So I've had children who students who are on the autistic range. I've had an adult student who was learning the violin because his wife had passed away and he wanted to do something different. So I've had all these different students, and the different circumstances have taught me to be a more empathetic human being, right? So in the sense of how do you approach, teaching a student who has a different life than you or different challenges. And I think once you understand that, then you're just more in touch with humanity. And if you're more in touch with humanity, I feel that you become a better performer, because so much of music is just based in understanding how humanity works.
All right. Well, never thought about that. So thanks for sharing that with us. So moving on, as you have attained a PhD in musicology from the University of Otago, would you like to elaborate on the challenges you had faced pursuing a music degree?
I'm not sure how relatable the PhD is, but I would say that the PhD and perhaps the earlier study in the master's level as well have made me a little bit better suited towards the MCO. Because if you're a PhD student, you're going to be trapped in an office by yourself, studying things until 3, 4, 5, 6. I remember leaving the office when the sun came out. You know, when the sun came out, it's like, okay, I think you better go home. So I suppose that works out in a particular way. I would just say that the reason why you should do postgraduate study is just because it opens up your mind, but it doesn't make you. It should make you smarter, but you will feel like it makes you dumber because you find out all the other things that you don't know. So the postgraduate study is a fantastic way to find out how ignorant you are. But the fact that you realize that just builds this curiosity, and it gives you the tools about addressing that curiosity and solving problems. So I would say that's a good reason. If you're a curious person and you like how curiosity has brought you places, you know, think about further study.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing that to us. Thanks for sharing that to the students in our attendee list. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that will definitely give them an idea of what they should be looking at. So yeah, moving on. According to LinkedIn, you have made various publications involving both the research regarding technical aspects of music playing, as well as adjustments to existing pieces. So would you care to describe your experience working on such topics?
Well, the kind of research I've done has changed. So what you've reminded me is that I should update my LinkedIn. But I did a lot of research to do with alternative tunings and how you can actually tune your instrument differently, not just randomly or not just instinctively, but using scientific methods, analyzing overtones and how the overtones change as you just fiddle with pegs. And by doing so, you can actually create new sounds from an instrument, and you can try and replicate sounds from even instruments that have gone extinct, like the violetta. We don't have it; it's gone, but we can make an educated guess about the type of sound it makes, and then you can adjust your strings on a viola in order to try and preserve that or recreate that kind of sound. So that was what my doctoral research was on. When I came back to Malaysia, I thought if I do this, you know, and I did do this, I kept publishing things in faraway places like in Europe or in Australia, New Zealand, in the US. And I thought I wanted something that people in Malaysia could understand. So I actually did a paper with two friends, Sanjeev Indran and Tan Ming. We did a research project on the music of Star Wars. And more recently, I published something on the effects of the MCO on not really the effects, but tips on home teaching from online from home, right? And I think that's been, my path has changed. So you can tell even with research, I get bored easily. And if you get bored easily, sometimes it takes you to interesting places.
Fair enough. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. Before we move on forward, I'd just like to remind everyone that the Q&A, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask us, please leave them in the Q&A section down below, as we are receiving questions from YouTube and Facebook. But yeah, so another thing before we move on forward, JPO would like to thank Dr. Andrew for participating and conducting in several events that have been organized in the past, such as the Vivaldi Concerto back in 2009, where you participated as a viola tutor, which involved orchestras from Malaysia, Singapore, Brunei, and even the Philippines. So this collaboration you had with us and the orchestras have allowed the JPO to further improve its members, as well as improve the orchestra's connections with other organizations, to which the JPO is very grateful to you for.
Oh, well, no need to. I'm happy to have been part of it. Yeah.
Thank you. Another thing that we'd like to thank you is your assistance and collaboration with the orchestra in the past Tip of Borneo Music Festival performance.
Yeah, well, I have a story about that. So for that, I did not plan to come for that concert. My family was on holiday, happened to be on holiday, and we were looking around, and suddenly I got a text message back in the day, I think on a phone that didn't even have color. I think it's like black and white. and Teacher Yapling, I remember the first line. It says emergency. The first emergency. You have to stay. You have to play. We will fly you back. So actually, my parents went back without me. My sister went back without me, and I told him, I don't have a viola. I don't have concert clothes. I don't have concert shoes. So I basically went to the concert playing his viola, wearing his pants, wearing his shirt, wearing his socks, I think, and certainly wearing his shoes. So that was like one of the most unusual experiences for me. But it just shows that the JPO, it functions on a sense of adaptability. If they have a problem, if something happens, they'll go all the way out to make a solution happen. That kind of resilience is what all of us need to get through not just this pandemic, but after this pandemic as well.
Well, thank you for commending our versatility there. It was definitely a very interesting story hearing that you and Shirley have this bonding experience.
I can't remember any other time where I've worn somebody else's entire outfit,
I bet a lot of us have. I bet a lot of us can't relate to that, but thanks for sharing that to us. So once again, it was an honor having you join us with so many events and even the tip of volume performance, which you had to stay slightly longer in Sabah for. So once again, thank you so much for that. So moving on, as you have extensive experience with training ensembles and musical workshops, including our own JPO workshops, as mentioned earlier with the Vivaldi Concerto, what can you suggest for the JPO so that we may improve our training sessions for our members? In addition to this, what can you propose to us during these difficult times whereby gathering as an orchestra isn't exactly possible?
Right. Yeah, I think I'll start with the last question. And what's going to be really important is we will be allowed to get together, but one of the last things that's going to happen is an entire orchestra in one place. And, that's the most difficult bit. But chances are you're going to be able to get 10, 20 people maybe in a room, right? With the right procedures, with the right distancing, with all that. And you've got to figure out what you can do in the meantime so that when you finally get back together as a large group, maybe even only next year, that you will have used that time productively. So what I would say is that this is a great time for sectionals to learn how to work together. Now, you're not going to do sectionals for 6 months. We'll drive everybody crazy, okay? But what you can do is do a lot of music, prepare a lot of music in sectional rehearsals, but also use the opportunity to do chamber music. So for cellists, they should be listening to works by the 12 cellists of the Berlin Phil, all of this wonderful ensemble music that they've played. It's a fantastic ensemble that was also formed by an accident, by the way, right? One of the cellists was driving on the road and he saw this underage girl hitchhiking, and he's a father himself, so he stopped the car and says, "Girl, you should. What are you doing here? You should get in the car. I'm going to send you home." So she gets in the car. And she says, "Tell me your address." And she says, "This is my address." And when he finally arrives in that part of Berlin, he says, "You must be kidding. I know this house. This is the house of that famous composer." And says, "Yeah, that's my father." And he didn't believe her, and he said to her, "If that's your father, you must tell him he must write for the 12 cellists of the Berlin Phil." And he did, because that was actually his daughter. And so that's how this ensemble came to be. So now that also, by something which shouldn't have been happening, the girl had run away from home, gave birth to the 12 cellists of the Berlin Phil. Now this pandemic is here. We need to hear the 12 cellists or the 16 cellists of the Jesselton Philharmonic, right? So you need to take this opportunity to make something happen. So you got to make the most out of it. Play chamber music. It doesn't just have to be with the cellists. It could be different. You can start creating quartets when you're allowed to get together as a quartet. When people allow you to get a large ensemble, you get an octet. And you need to actually build this time to listen a lot more. I think, quite frankly, a lot of young musicians play a lot in orchestras, but they don't do enough chamber music. The kind of skills that you're going to get in learning chamber music are going to be so useful when playing in an orchestra. Because what I would love to see is at the beginning of next year, whenever this happens, when the orchestra finally comes back together, first of all, we're going to be so grateful for the opportunity to play in an orchestra once again. But more importantly, you need to be so well tuned that no matter where you're sitting, if you're the last desk, that you know exactly how the first desk is sounding, and your ears have become better because of all that chamber music that you're doing. So that for me is my advice as to what we can do during the time of the pandemic. As for your training sessions, it's been a while, so I can't exactly comment on that. But I think generally speaking for ensembles, it's really important to know what other people are playing. Just like in life, it's important to know what other people are doing, and learning how to read not just your part but a full score becomes really crucial. Especially now you've got things like IMSLP. You can easily download the whole orchestral score. You don't even need to print it out. You can use it on a tablet. But to actually listen and to go through a score, first of all, it makes you understand how your part fits in with everything else. But who knows? It could inspire you to be a composer or conductor as well.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. I'm sure that the heads of the JBO are starting to will definitely take your suggestions into account regarding how we're going to move on forward as an orchestra. So thank you again, Dr. Andrew.
Thank you.
So thank you. So without further ado, we'll be starting our Q&A section. So as we can see in the chat, we have a question from YouTube from a person named Cyrus Chan.
I think Cyrus is one of my, if I'm not mistaken, this is the same Cyrus as one of my students, but go ahead.
Okay. So he's asking, he's saying, hi, Dr. Andrew. Music education and music teachers are facing a big problem right now during this pandemic for having, in terms of having music lessons. So what can you give as suggestions on how we're going to stay alive in that sense?
Tough question, Cyrus. A big part of this is a chance for you to not just be a good student, a good teacher to your current students, but you're already online, you're already in front of a computer, you're already buying equipment like microphones and all that. And people are looking online for options. And so I think that one part of it is, if you haven't had an online presence before this is the time to do that. Right? And this is a time for you to invest in your teaching as well, right? So things like buying microphones like I'm doing, or just learning how to use the technology better. I mean, I don't know how many music teachers actually know that if you're having a live instrument, you should find this thing called turn on original sound. You should disable background suppression in your advanced audio settings. You should turn off your HD video settings because of broadband. These are just technical things that you can, if you figure it out, it takes 2 minutes to press the buttons and the lesson becomes more effective. So it's about being industrious. And I get it for teachers teaching online that this is a very difficult time, but we really need to show as a group, as music teachers as a whole, we need to show that we can adapt really quickly, and so that we can give the best out of our lessons. Also, coming back to what I was saying before, we really should be using the opportunity to make the most out of the available resources, and not just trying to make up for things that have not worked in the past, but to also use some of the advantages of this. So can I give you an example, right? If you don't mind, I'm actually going to show you. So one of the problems when you're teaching online is that you don't hear the exact sound of a student, and the internet compression, the compression of sound sometimes is garbled, it's not clear. You can't be sure whether, in a particular case, the students may be actually having a good dynamic range, but you don't hear it because of the way that it's transmitted to you. So what you need to do, what you could do, I wouldn't say what you need to do. One thing that you could do is you could ask the in between lessons, that's what I get students to do, is to record yourself, right? And then send me that file, which is going to sound a lot better than doing it live online. And I got permission from one of my students to show you what she sent me. She's fantastic. You know, this student really has taken time to send me a video, that really addresses her problems. And even when she makes a mistake, she acknowledges, you don't have to tell me this, I know it's a mistake. Okay. Then what I've done over that is overdubbed that recording and send it back to her with my comments. So you'll see it in a moment. I'm just going to show you what that's like. So I'd like to thank Natasha Grande for allowing me to use this. this is first the video that she sent to me, and then a sample of a video I've sent back to her. If I can find it, yes, this is the one.
Nice. Vibrato is a bit too quick here. And be careful about emphasizing too many notes.
So like that's an example of something that we wouldn't have even thought of doing before. But now we've done this, we've sort of set a format of, we have a live session, there's certain things I can't do, and then in between we have this. She tells me already that it's stressful to record, and I said, of course it is. We hate recording because we can hear ourselves, we hear all our mistakes, but it's such a great learning process. And I think she knows this as well, of course. She's not just complaining, but she's gotten so much out of the process of recording. And I think we can make, if the students find out they can do even better, right, from this format, or learn differently, I think that we'll survive. So I think we'll still stay alive, Cyrus.
I'm sure Cyrus is definitely grateful for that answer. And yeah, the whole idea about doing recordings is definitely a very a unique approach. So yeah, thanks for sharing that with us, Dr. Andrew, and thank you, Natasha, for allowing us to view that video as well.
She's closer to you than she is to me, by the way. She's in Brunei.
Oh, okay. So yeah, moving on. Our next, we have another message from someone. I'm not too sure if this is teacher uplink or if it's from another music teacher. So being a music teacher, thank you. Online music lessons can't be a long-term plan, especially when we are talking about having string instrument lessons. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I would say that there's nothing that beats in-person teaching. So, yeah, you know, I'm not advocating online lessons as being a permanent solution. But what I hope we'll get from this is the idea that there are certain things like these recordings. Even if you don't need to, you're going to see a student in a week's time, but still get the student to record 10, 20 seconds. And you find that the process of recording will actually help the student and will help you as well to prepare for the next lesson, right? Especially when, for me, for that video, when she already says that I'm rushing here. So I know she already knows this, I don't have to pester her about it, right? But yeah, I mean, I'm not sure who this teacher is and what the issue is, but especially for young students, a broken string, tuning an instrument, if you can't do those things, then it's a problem. So the question is, like, look, we hope that this is a once in a century thing. We'll never face this again, but I think this is a great opportunity to start teaching parents how to tune violins. You know, that's the only solution I've come across, because, you know, I don't teach kids of that level anymore. And I suppose I don't face those challenges, but I honestly feel this is a time to get a lot of parents in a Zoom meeting and say that, look, if you haven't already gotten a broken string, you are going to. Let's finally teach you how to string an instrument and to tune an instrument. And I feel that is at least going to help things. But yeah, I don't deny that actually I agree with the idea that it shouldn't be a long-term plan, but it's what we've got, and I think we can make something out of it.
Yep. Teacher Upling has just corrected me on that. So basically, that message was also from Cyrus.
Okay.
So, yeah. All right. So my mistake on that part. Moving on, we have another question from David Chin. So David's asked, what are the first 3 things you will do after the MCO is lifted?
If the MCO is lifted on the 9th of June, right? That means 9th of June is the last day. At 3 o'clock in the morning on the 10th of June, I will be in my car on the way to Penang. So that's the first thing, all right? And I think items 2 and 3 will have to do with people close to me, right, who are in Penang. So I look forward to seeing my sister's kids, my parents, my sister, and and there's one other person who's quite close to me in Penang. I'm looking forward to seeing.
All right. Thank you for that answer. So moving on, we have another question also from YouTube, from a person named Lin Lee. Maybe you recognize this person as well. So she has a question for you. So Dr. Filmer, what do you miss most about live performances?
I miss the rehearsals more than I miss the live performances. That's the truth. You know, it's really made me realize that so much of rehearsals, if you're with people that you like, a lot of it is coming early, and Lynn always has what we call magic water. So her water always has oranges or lime in it, and it's always quite interesting. And that whole collaboration is really what makes the live performance exciting, because it's gone into this process of us being together as human beings more than musicians. It's about me feeding her cat Muluku, which I will guarantee to still do after the MCO. You have my word on that. And it is, that sense of collaboration. I actually miss it more than the actual concerts themselves. So it's a kind of a non-answer to her question. What do I miss about live performance? I actually don't miss the live performances as I do the rehearsals. But of course, the thing I like most about live performances is with various groups is I give a narration before, even if I'm not hired as a narrator, I like to give a bit of a story and try to educate audiences about the piece that we're about to play, because pieces we play might be very obscure, but there might be something in the piece which is quite interesting. We want them to listen for it and see why it's so interesting. So oftentimes I illustrate, we play an excerpt before the concert begins. This is the part which is interesting. If I'm very industrious, then I'll say, it could have sounded like this, and we'll recompose it. And see, this wouldn't be so interesting, but the composer has done this, has added a seventh, or changed a chord, or did something with the melody. And seeing the audience have that light bulb moment when we actually play a particular part of the music, and then they go, that's the part he was talking about. I miss that the most about performance.
All right. Well, I'm sure Lynn definitely appreciated that answer. So now we have another question also from David Chin from YouTube. So he has a question for you, Dr. Filmer. What positive impacts do you think the pandemic has brought for both musicians and also human beings in general?
Well, I would say it makes us really appreciate things more. Suddenly with so much has been taken away, and we'll miss those things, and we'll really appreciate it the next time we get to play in a concert. I tell you, I think the quality of music is going to be fantastic. That's the thing that's going to come out of this. It's because we're going to miss it so much that when we actually get there, we're going to treat it with such enthusiasm that it's going to be really something special. So I really do think we'll appreciate that more. I think it has brought human beings, I think, closer together in a way. I personally know people who contracted the virus. Yeah, no joke. And I'm very close to one of the front line is the doctor treating the COVID patients. And I know what it's like from that perspective as well. So it really, this kind of threat to humanity in general has really, I think, made us more empathetic, that everybody will now remember this period of time. Everybody in the world is going to remember this period of time, right? And we're kind of in the same boat, and we can sink or swim together. So I think it also shows us that, one person, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But when we're all together, even though we are sitting all at home, if we can find a way to combine our efforts and plan ahead, that's going to be really helpful. And I'm going to make one work joke. It says, we're going to realize how many meetings don't ever have to happen and can be an email.
Sorry, we're going to, sorry, what was that?
The last one is that we're going to find out in offices how many meetings don't have to happen and they can just be in the form of an email.
Fair enough. I think that's going to be quite obvious in the long run. So yeah, thanks again for the answer. I'm sure David appreciates that. So now we have another person asking a question. So this person is Gary Kwan from YouTube.
Yeah.
You might know this person as well.
I do.
You do? That's good. So this person.
I don't think we've ever met, but I know him virtually. Yeah.
Okay.
So he's Dr. Kwan. I think teaches in the East Coast of Peninsular Malaysia. I think he's also a lecturer or senior lecturer in a university over there. Yeah, but we've talked before. We've almost collaborated, but never had the chance to.
Okay. Well, I'm sure maybe after once all this is over, maybe you guys will actually get the chance to do so.
Sure.
So Gary Kwan is saying, "Hi, Dr. Andrew. Thank you for sharing your experience as a performer and an educator. Do you mind sharing more about your expertise engaging your audience for an online live performance?"
Yeah. By the way, I've been thankfully corrected. He's a music therapist and associate professor at USM. Thank you very much, Teacher Yatling, for that information. Well, Gary, the idea about engaging people in a live performance, it's more and more difficult now because there's a glut. There are too many people now occupying the same space. I'm sure that we're here live from 9 to 10. I'm sure there are at least 2 other programs that are on at the same time. So I think a big part of it with an online live performance deals with some of the things that you would have in whether it's online or not. Yeah, so I honestly think that it's to do with having a story, having something that's meaningful, and there's a reason why you present something. Sometimes it's a way of even surprising people, like having a music video where somebody comes in. Look, that video at the very beginning where Kirtana comes in the middle and sings a verse, right? She could have been singing throughout, but we made it special by bringing her in, especially for that one section. And that's inspired from the live performance where we don't announce that she's singing and then she starts singing from the back of the hall and it surprises everybody. So we just wanted to replicate that online. I think it worked. So that could be it. A lot of it, I think, comes from engagement. So if you bring in other people, then you bring in those communities that are related to those people. I found that kind of works as well. So then it gets, everybody feels like this is a community project, not just a solo project. I don't have great answers in terms of online live performance because I'm just as new to it as anybody else. But I would say that we learn by doing, and we'll see how that goes.
Thank you for that answer. Yeah, so Teacher Atling has pointed out something, so it's my mistake for not noticing this part. But Dr. Gary and Dr. David Chin were both guest speakers for our program for previous broadcasts. So once again, sorry for not noticing that, and thank you for joining our previous broadcast. So now we have another question from Dr. Gary. So besides, can you share some tips on making your teaching more interesting, especially when working with special kids?
Yeah, so the most important thing, I think, is that a lot of teachers teach the way they were taught. Yeah, and this is whether it's online or it's not online. This is the major. If there's one message that I want to convince every music teacher to consider, to reflect, is that sometimes if we don't think about it, we teach the exact same way we were taught, and it worked for us. So why shouldn't it work, right? So that's the logic. But the problem with that is it worked with us because the teachers that we had may have tailored the lesson to us. So do these particular studies work for every student? Maybe, but there are some other studies that work better for some students than others. Very often I create individual exercises for a student. It's very important to look at the physiology of students to see whether their hand shape is the same. I can only bend my thumb this far back. Some thumbs go further back than this, and that changes the whole way that the thumb moves around an instrument. Some people actually have big hands, but the palm is actually much bigger, so the fingers actually can't stretch as much. So just like we deal with things physiologically, I think psychologically as well, we've got to treat each individual quite differently. It's quite important to set your priorities. early on. You might find out that a parent doesn't actually have like, I must do a grade 8 in 2 years' time. We may perceive that that's the goal, but actually that may not be what the parent wants, nor the student, nor you actually. But we all have been thinking that that should be the goal. So I think especially with kids with special needs, which I think is his question, I think we've got to come down to the most basic thing about music, which is that it must be fun, right? So sometimes we get very trapped in, I must teach technique, I must teach intonation, and all this. But I think we've got to find out first that it must be fun first, and then we've got to show them that if you can focus on this area of intonation, it'll be even more fun, right? But I think somehow as Malaysians, we kind of forget this element of fun. I remember that in Penang, I used to conduct this concert. They have a mid-year concert and they call it the fun concert, as opposed to the end-year concert, which is the serious annual concert. And I said to the audience, I said, they invited me here for a fun concert and I don't know what they're talking about because all my concerts are fun, and I think we've got to come down to that very basic thing that you got to enjoy it first and not just think of it as, oh, if I'm strict with you and you play in tune, you will go home and you will have fun there, but here's not the time for you to have fun. This is your lesson. So I think lessons can be fun. I think if you start off with enjoyment, even if they play out of tune for the first few lessons, let them play out of tune and have fun, and then slowly, get those other things in so that you can show them how it can be even more fun through discipline. That would be my main thing. But coming back to my main idea here, it's very important that teachers don't just teach the way they were taught. You have to treat everybody as an individual human being with different needs, and do the best you can. I'll give you an example. I actually had a student who had attention deficit disorder, right? And he could not pay attention for more than a few minutes. And it was so difficult. The student had been dropped by several teachers, and I was the last hope kind of thing. And basically one day I looked at him and I said, can you just tell me what you like most? And he said, and then it was the first time he looked me in the eye. He never looked, he was always like this, distracted. He actually looked me in the eye and says, I like math. Every lesson that came by after that, I would draw a graph, right? And the graph would be, this is your bow speed, or this is your bow speed, and this is your bow angle, or something like that. And I would actually give numbers that says, you have done 0.7, on this scale of, I just make up numbers and draw a graph. But you look at the graph and go, okay, so you need to counteract this with a 0.3 movement in the other direction. And then he would think about it. And then he would suddenly play with a straight bow, and he would suddenly play with the right bow speed, because I translated it to him in a language which attracted him, and I don't like math. So, you have to approach things in ways that you may not enjoy, but you have to find out what works for your student. That's what my advice would be.
All right, well, that was definitely interesting. Yeah. So, thanks again, Dr. Andrew. So I think we've just about reached the end of our program. We've just about run out of time. So once again, thank you so much for your insight and answers to the questions from our attendees. So once again, sorry everyone, but we are coming to the end of tonight's broadcast. We would like to remind everyone that our JPO Family Program will be broadcasted twice a week until further notice. Join us next time with our next guest, who will be revealed at a later date. So more details on this can be found on our JPO Facebook page. A video recording of tonight's broadcast will also be available on the Facebook page and the YouTube channel. So along with the past webinars and the soon-to-be broadcasted webinars will also be uploaded onto these mediums. So please feel free to share the links, the Zoom webinar link, the JPO Facebook page, and even the YouTube channel to your friends and family. So once again, you guys have been an amazing audience, and you guys have been an amazing audience, and it seems that we do not really have any more questions left for Dr. Andrew. So once again, thank you so much for dedicating your time to joining us tonight. So
thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure talking to you. It was nice that we met up earlier. I found out that you have played the viola before, so that's what you should be doing during this pandemic. Is you should be picking up the viola again. Yeah, just saying.
Unfortunately, I might like you back during the tour of Borneo. I do not have a viola with me at the moment.
How does anybody not have a viola? How?
Once again, we from the JPO family wishes that everyone stays safe and healthy as we continue to face this crisis together. So I will now lead the prayer to end tonight's program. So please pray in whatever faith that you believe in regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. We pray that everyone in the world continues to stay strong in surviving through these difficult times, and that a solution to the virus will soon be found. We pray for everyone's well-being as we come to the end of May. We pray for the safety and well-being of the people continuing to work after the Hari Raya holidays. We pray for the continued safety and morale of the frontliners who are risking their lives so that they may continue to provide for those in need. So once again, thank you to everyone joining us tonight, and thank you, Dr. Andrew, for joining us.
So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So good night, and we hope to see you all next time.
Take care.
Take care.